Hello and welcome to all of our viewers. Thank you for joining us today. We're the Ocean Cleanup and our mission is to rid the world's oceans of plastic. Today marks our 100th extraction of plastic pollution from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and it's the first one we're bringing to you live, giving you the opportunity to see the entire operation from start to finish. My name is Jessica, and I am joined this evening by Glenn, our Head of Operations. Glenn has been offshore and knows all about our operations. Glenn, how are you feeling this evening?
Yeah, very excited. It's going to be a good day today. I think these extractions are always big moments for us. So we go out there to the middle of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. We have these trips, which we spend 7 weeks out there, but these are real highlight moments. These are the days when we get to see the catch that we've collected over the preceding few days. We're going to bring that on board and we're going to see all that plastic on deck for the first time and know that it's never going to be back in the environment again. So they're special days for us. They're days when we get to see all of our hard work pay off. And this being number 100, that's super special as well. When we started with System 2 in 2001, this would have felt like a very long time away, but here we are and we're still going and looking forward to bigger things even to come. And being able to share it with everybody as well. It's going to be a really special thing, and we've been looking forward to this for a long time as well. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very excited to bring it to you live today. So we're the Ocean Cleanup, and our mission is to rid the world's oceans of plastic. We aim to remove 90% of floating ocean plastic by 2040, and to do this, we have a dual strategy. So on the one hand, we want to intercept plastic in rivers to prevent it from reaching the ocean. And on the other hand, we want to clean up the legacy plastic pollution that is already in the ocean. And we need to do this as quickly as possible before it breaks down further into microplastics. And this is exactly what you'll be seeing today. Now, it's 7:02 p.m. here in the Netherlands on Wednesday, May the 29th, and in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, it is 9:02 a.m. in the morning. Now, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is located in the Pacific Ocean, halfway between Hawaii and California. The weather conditions today are looking good. Now, you'll be with us for the next 2 hours to watch this live operation. Glenn, what can our viewers expect to see over the next 2 hours?
Yeah, well, we're talking about extraction, so like we said, that's the moment when we are going to bring our catch of plastic back on deck, and we're going to empty that out and we're going to store it on the vessels to take back to the port. So that's the process that we're going to cover in general. I think to give people a little bit of context, if they're not familiar with how the system looks, we're operating well, we'll give a little bit of a description later on, I think, so we'll cover that in a few videos, but we're operating a long boom which we're towing through the water. So there's 2 vessels that are towing this through the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It's kind of in a big U shape, if people have seen that, if they're familiar with that from social media pictures. And in the center of that U, we've got this collection bag, which we'll call it. So that we call the retention zone. So all of the plastic is coming down the U shape. In fact, you can see it there on the screen now. It's coming down the sides of that U shape and it's all going into that central point. That's where it's all being collected and concentrated. So we do that over the course of a couple of days. And then now it's time to do that extraction. So that's what we're going to see over the next couple of hours.
All right. And this is quite a big system. The system length is 2.2 kilometers. We just saw that it was 0.8 times the size of the Golden Gate bridges.
Yeah, it's an enormous thing, yeah.
And it can sweep the area of a football field every 5 seconds, I've heard.
Yeah, indeed, yeah. So we're moving very slowly. Again, we'll describe a little bit as we go through the live stream tonight how the system works and how we operate it. But we're moving very slowly, but because it's such an enormous system, then we are able to cover a lot of area very quickly, yeah. So.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see it, and I hope you are too. And on top of this live action, we also have some guests that will be joining us here in the studio. Now, I assume some of you might not know that much about the Ocean Cleanup, so let's cut to a short video now that explains what we do, and we'll be back with you shortly.
So at the Ocean Cleanup, our mission is to rid the world's oceans of plastic.
The real complicated part of this puzzle is that everything is interlinked.
What we need to do is 2 things. 1, we need to clean up the legacy pollution. 2, we need to close the tap.
Everyone's ready?
If we have the motivation and we have the skills, we will get there.
first few years, we really focused on trying to understand the problem and map it, which then became the basis on which we developed our solutions. Our philosophy is to learn as we go and iterate our way towards success.
Good luck! We have just passed the Golden Gate Bridge, the iconic moment.
Every hour is a small victory, and every plastic piece that we will catch is a small victory.
So we have a major structural failure.
This is normal. Welcome to the world of cutting-edge technology.
The plastic is within arm's reach, literally. We can't be that far away from getting a system working.
Whoa! Here, it's all tiny particles also.
What is the next logical step?
Boyan always thinks about improving.
With this machine, I truly believe that we're on the right track.
Dirty river comes in, a clean river comes out.
That's a teddy bear.
This is the day, this is the moment, finally.
Time has come now to deliver on our promises.
It's so beautiful to see this.
Whoa!
The most exciting thing in the world, to me.
We have shown that we are capable to repeatedly harvest large amounts of plastic.
Let this mark the beginning of the end for the Great Pacific Garbage Patch.
Imagine if we do get this done, we could truly make our oceans clean again. That's a future to look forward to.
Welcome back. I love that video. Now I'm joined by Boyan Slat, our founder and CEO. Welcome, Boyan.
Thank you.
So you started the ocean cleanup when you were 18, and
Correct.
you've been driven to solve this problem ever since. So you've been on the journey for 10 years now. What is it like to see this extraction live today?
I mean, it's incredibly exciting. It's been as we saw in the video just now, it was very long and at times very sort of painful journey. The ocean is very unforgiving, and to just keep something in one piece is already a huge challenge, let alone let it collect plastic. And of course, that's what we learned with our first system. It didn't stay in one piece and it didn't collect plastic, which of course is a pretty important thing for an ocean cleanup system. So now that we're here in, literally just 3 years ago, we were playing around with tiny prototypes in a lake here in the Netherlands, and that we're now being able to see this live here 3 years later, and that it's not exactly routine, but that it's something that we are doing continuously.
Mm-hmm.
That it's just almost a normal thing. While it used to be this sort of abstract dream that everyone just said was not possible. In short, it's just very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So why is this problem so important to solve in your eyes?
Yeah, so plastic pollution is one of the largest threats our oceans face today. So, of course, you have the huge damage on ecosystems, right? So, you're talking about hundreds of species threatened with extinction, which would be such a loss, I think, for everyone for that to happen. There is the economic impacts as well. So, it's estimated to be somewhere between $6 to $19 billion per year to keep this plastic in. So it's just a super dumb thing to let the plastic stay in the ocean, right? It's just so much cheaper to take it out than to not take it out. So I think I think also matters. And then there's also the big risk that all this plastic that's already in the ocean, this stuff has been there up to 60 years, right? So really the microplastic that we see today used to be the large objects just a few decades ago, right? So if we don't take out this plastic now, all of this mass will, which by the way today is still mostly large objects, will fragment down into smaller and smaller microplastics, which then of course end up in the food chain and in the fish we eat, which potentially threatens the health of 3 billion people around the world. So to me, it's just a no-brainer. And I think beyond that, look, I think we're in the 21st century. We go to space. We are able to fly around the world. It just seems such a the way we're treating the environment seems like such an archaic thing, like something from the past. Like, why on earth do we have a garbage patch in the ocean, right? So I don't think there's a shortage of problems in the world today, and I think what the world really needs now is an example to show, like, problems are there to be solved, and this is how you do it, not by complaining about it and pointing at it, but by using our brains, our ingenuity, and our perseverance to actually solve it. So,
well, that's maybe a nice lead into how do we solve the problem.
So I think I just heard you explain that we have this two-pronged strategy, right? So we, on one hand, work on preventing more plastic from going into the ocean. Now, on that front, there's of course many things one can do. So and I think there's so many initiatives on that front now, and I think they're all complementary and they're all useful when it comes to waste management infrastructure, designing alternative materials, different product designs, circular economy, all of that. But I think we should be mindful that there's about 400 million tons of plastic being produced on an annual basis, which is a huge amount of material, right? So it's such a pillar of our economy that just changing that overnight is just not going to happen. You're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars in capital investments, producing this material. It's, that stuff is going to stay there for a while. But the good news is that actually only a very small fraction of that plastic reaches the ocean, in the order of 0.1% of that plastic. Now, mind you, that's still a lot of plastic, right? So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of tons. So that is, and just a kilo of plastic is enough to fill an area like this, right? So plastic is a very light material. So hundreds of thousands of tons is a huge amount. But dealing with that 0.1% naturally is going to be way easier than dealing with the 100% at the top of the funnel, right? So that's why we focus on intercepting plastic in rivers, because we believe that that's just the fastest and most cost-effective way to stop more plastic from going into the ocean. It's not. Ideally, of course, we would want plastic to not even enter these rivers, but again, this is such an urgent problem. I don't think we have the luxury to just wait for perfection. I think the world demands a solution now, and that's why we're focusing on intercepting plastic in rivers, because it's not just that we have to deal with such a relatively small amount of plastic, but it's also very geographically concentrated. So just 1% of rivers we see are responsible for 80% of the pollution, according to a study we published a few years ago. So we can really pinpoint where we have to be to stop the inflow. Now, so that's one part of the equation. Now, the other thing is that there's still a lot of plastic that's already in the ocean, right? And that is especially an issue, actually almost exclusively an issue in what you call the ocean garbage patches. So you have 5 areas on Earth called gyres, where currents converge, and if plastic ends up in that area, it's very hard for that stuff to ever escape. It's like the plug of a bathtub, essentially. So once the plastic is there, it's trapped and it's there to stay for a very long time, right? So plastic is a very durable material. That's why humanity loves it so much to use it in many different ways. But it's kind of a problem if it's in the middle of the ocean. So that's why if we really want to return to clean oceans, we have to also clean up that legacy pollution that's trapped in the gyres. And of course, that's why we go out there with our cleanup systems. It's not like we want to do this. Of course, it's much cheaper and easier to capture plastic in a river than in the middle of the ocean, but we're kind of too late for that, for the 100 million kilos that's trapped between Hawaii and California. So that's why we're out there, and that's why what we're looking at now is so important. Like, this is, without this, we will never get back to clean oceans.
Indeed. So today is extraction 100. How did we get to where we are today? Could you share a little bit about our learnings from the first 99 extractions and all of the months we spent offshore, and then also maybe a little bit about the history of our ocean operations?
Yeah, of course, you know, you're Glenn here, so you've been probably more intimately involved with the actual at-sea operation side, but yeah, it's been quite a learning journey. Of course, you know, technically, I always like to point out that, you know, we're not cleaning up yet. Of course, we're taking out a lot of plastic. We're now at almost 0.5% of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. But this is not yet the cleanup, right? We're in this preparatory phase. We are developing the technology and we're maturing the technology to be able to do that effectively. And you know, that comes down to a couple of things. So it's the hardware itself. So it's the cleanup barrier, and the ships, of course, as well as the operation. So it's so where we've been focusing on is fundamentally 2 KPIs. So on one hand, you got the uptime, so making sure that we keep the system towing as close to 100% of the time as possible. Of course, you lose time going back and forth to the patch and doing the extractions, etc. But you know, what we try and avoid is doing the having downtime due to damage or due to all sorts of operational reasons, weather, etc. So that's one thing we focus on, and the other thing is the cleanup effectiveness. So for every hour that you're towing, you want to maximize the kilos of plastic that you collect, which comes down to, on one hand, being smart at where you tow. So even within the garbage patch, you have huge variety in terms of the densities of the plastic, right? So you have days when you see plastic everywhere, and then you have days when it looks completely clean. And you want to constantly be in those hotspots. And of course, we've gotten better and better at predicting those, at training our models, all of that. But also, there is just the efficiency of the system. How well can you capture plastic? And as part of that, the big thing for 2023 was to scale up the system. So, originally with System 2, which was the first system that actually properly worked, we had this 800-meter long device. And then last year, we gradually scaled that up to now something that's 2.2 kilometers in length. So it's almost 3 times the size.
Yeah, we can see a timeline now of the different iterations.
So so of course, before System 2, we had some systems that were sort of less successful. But since 2022, we've had a system that really works. And then last year was really about the scaling up that system. And now this year is, now that we have that the first full-scale ocean cleanup system, it's about maturing that to hit the performance that we desire from it. So concretely, 100 kilos per hour. If we can hit that, then we're really on track to get the job done and meet our cleanup objectives. So that's what the focus is on now, is pushing those the performance to where we want it to be.
That makes sense. So thinking back to our first extraction, I remember that there were a lot of excited messages going through the group chat. Do you still get as excited today as you did back then?
Oh yeah, and usually this is the first time we get such nice images from the garbage patch. So it's actually really, really exciting for me to see that. I've still not been to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, so it's cool to. It's like as close as you can be now without actually going there.
Yeah.
But it's looking back, reflecting on the first extraction, that was of course different. It was a very sort of high pressure moment when years and years of development had gone into the project, and we had not had like real successes. Like with System 1B, yes, we were collecting plastic, so technically it worked, but it was not at a scale that we could actually scale this up to something that could clean up the garbage patch. We would just need so many systems; it would just be crazy. So it was August, September 2021. We're out there, first trip with System 2, and the first tow we did was a very short trial run, which was I think 2 hours. We got about 100 kilos. We took it out, and we're like, okay, well, just quick back of the envelope calculation. Well, that's like pretty good, right? That's it's kind of exactly in line of what we expected for that system 2. And then we deployed again, and this time it was a full night, so 12 hours long. So we deployed it, we took it out again, and then again we saw 100 kilos, and then we were starting to panic a bit. Well, panic might be a big word, but we were starting to get a bit uncomfortable because you can imagine. So the system is this long U-shaped barrier, and then you have this retention zone in the middle. You could imagine a hypothesis or a scenario where the wings just don't collect plastic, it doesn't get funneled, and you're just collecting the plastic with your retention zone. So we thought, oh, maybe that's actually what's going on. And then we deployed again for the third extraction, and that actually yielded a couple of tons, and that was the first kind of heap. And then we were like over the moon excited, right? Because that was, was just, I remember waking up that day and I got all these missed calls and text messages, and I opened and I saw this photo of this mountain of plastic on deck, and that was, I don't think I've ever been that relieved. It was, so actually now reflecting on then and now, like back then it was less celebratory. I think it was more of a, just a lot of weight getting off my shoulders, and from the whole team, of course. But and now it's, we know, we have a working system. So it's not a question of does it work. Now it's really just optimizing, getting ready for scale up, and I can be a bit more comfortable sitting here now.
That's good to hear. So looking towards the rest of the year, what's next? What do you envision for the ocean cleanup?
Yeah, so really, of course, lots of things going on the riverside. We got a couple of very exciting deployments coming up that will have quite some big implications for certain parts of the world. So that will be, can't wait to share more about that. But then, looking at the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, it's just chasing that performance, trying to get to the 100 kilos per hour. And I think once we achieve that, once we are able to reliably fill these ships with mountains of plastic, then we hope to get to the point that we can say, hey, we're ready, technology is ready for it. Humanity now has the tools capable of cleaning the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and now it's really just, now it's just about the choice. Does humanity choose to actually do it? And essentially then comes down to the funding challenge. So we're not fully there yet. I think there's still, in the coming months, we aim to drive that performance up. But if all goes well, I hope that this year we can hit that milestone, and with that really start expanding to a fleet of systems which we ultimately need to get the whole job done.
All right, well, I'm excited. Now, we have a couple of questions for you from social media.
Sure.
So the first one is, when are you scaling up your systems?
So the system itself is now at roughly the definite final size. So we might add a few hundred meters, or maybe even reduce it, just sort of optimization, because of course, there's no such thing as a free lunch at sea, right? So you have, the larger you make it, you also have more drag, so that limits the vessels you can use, that increases your energy usage. So it's kind of optimizing it, but roughly speaking, the system itself is at full size. Now, of course, to get the whole job done, we will need a fleet of these systems. We currently think roughly 10 of these systems will be required to do the job. Of course, once you start adding systems, the cost is going to increase rapidly, right? So So it's this trying to balance, on one hand, optimizing one system first before scaling up, while on the other hand, you also don't want to wait for perfection because you're never going to get to a perfect system, right? So at some point in time, we have to decide, like now we think it's good enough, and start the ramp up. And again, hopefully by some point this year, we will be comfortable enough to say that now we will look for funders, we'll look for partners to adopt a system, and with that, then scale up the fleet.
All right. Thank you. And now another question that we have. This was not live, but one that we received earlier is, what's your most memorable moment?
In life?
At the ocean cleanup.
Okay, I'll limit it to that. So I think definitely those first extractions were a big deal. But yeah, I think another one was with Guatemala, with our system there. It's and actually it wasn't the moment that it works. Of course, 2023 would be very successful. Millions of kilos, were intercepted, prevented from reaching the Caribbean. But for me, actually a more memorable moment was in 2022, when we had our first iteration. We had built this giant 20-foot high avalanche fence in the river, and it was just a crazy idea, definitely a stupid idea as well. But we had been working for years and years on that one river, and it just became this nemesis. Like it was us versus these trash tsunamis coming down this river. And then we weren't successful in the preceding years. We finally put that system in. And again, it was a video from a team member on my phone that I received, and just seeing this big mountain of plastic against that trash fence was just beyond amazing. And then unfortunately, a few hours later, I received the message that we lost all the plastic again. So it was just this amazing roller coaster because I won't go into details here, but essentially the soil under the trash fence had flushed away, and that caused the trash, when the water level receded, the trash could escape. So, but it was just we were just so close to getting the job done there, and of course after that, I had to visit the country, I had to visit the coastline, and I had to witness all the trash that was on the beach that slipped through our fingers, and we were just so close. And
what was that like?
Frustrating and painful. It just felt so personal. This is like, once you touch the pollution, it kind of becomes yours, right? So it just felt, I've been to other polluted coastlines, not as bad as the one in Guatemala, by the way, but it doesn't really feel. I mean, you're just observing, right? You feel like an anthropologist observing this phenomenon. But yeah, that trash just felt different because we kind of touched it, right? It hit our system, but we failed to stop it. So that was painful, but also, of course, a big motivator. And then a year later, we're stopping these flushes. Again, they're not perfect yet, but I feel we're getting very close to getting the job done there. But yeah, that's definitely so. It just looking back, we've had plenty of failures over the years.
Learnings.
But exactly. So we learned so much from them, and they without them we wouldn't be where we are now, where we have working systems in rivers, we have working system in the ocean, and we're getting to the point that it really is just a scale-up challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, do you have any words that you'd like to share with the crew that's working out there today?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think we have a two-way sound connection with them, but we should actually look into doing that. We'll probably abuse it, but yeah, it's I mean, as I said, I've not been to the garbage patch yet, and but I do, really admire their dedication. They're away from home for 7 weeks. That's quite a big deal, and they know like every minute counts, every hour counts. While at the same time, of course, taking safety into account, but still, there's this constant pressure to perform. So yeah, of course, super proud, and I guess it's not every day that they, so of course they're there to do a job, and they're focused on getting the job done. But I do hope that once in a while they get some time for themselves to kind of reflect on how special it is what they're doing. Right? It's that such a group of hundreds of professionals come together without any profit motive, but solely for the job of doing something great for humanity and the planet is, I mean, I can't think of any other examples, to be honest. So it's, so I hope they have the opportunities to reflect on that, and just, super proud of them.
Well, thank you, Boyan. You'll be joining us a little bit later in the program.
Sure, yeah.
For now, it's a lot of information. So let's cut to a video about System 3 that explains how the system works, so you know what you can expect to see shortly.
We are here in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch with our latest system, System 3, also known as Josh. And Josh is basically a 2.2 kilometer big floating barrier. And the biggest part of this system is made up by 2 wings of 4 meters deep that skim the ocean surface for floating plastics. And those plastics, they float along the wing to a central area which we call the retention zone. And the retention zone is basically a big garbage bag where all the plastics are collected. And this system is being towed through the ocean by 2 vessels, like the one I'm on now. And they tow this system with a very low speed, 1.5 knots or a little bit less than 3 kilometers an hour, so it's slower than you would walk. So we always see a lot of fish swimming in the system and swimming back out. And in this retention zone we also have a lot of cameras, so we can see what's going on. We always try to find the spots here in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch with the highest plastic density, and we call those hotspots. We have computational modelers. They look at waves and current, and they are getting better and better at predicting where in this vast ocean the plastic density will be the highest. And after we've been out here for 3 or 4 days and have been collecting plastics, our garbage bag is getting full. So then we are going to do an extraction. And whenever we do an extraction, one of the 2 vessels towing the system is taking both wings on board, so that the other vessel is free to go to the rear, and it will then tie off the garbage bag and pull it on deck.
We're back. Now you've just seen the system, and we're about to see some live action. Glenn, what are we looking at right now?
Yeah, so if we can get a picture up of and see where they are on the deck. Well, you can see just over my shoulder there, but I'm sure it's coming. Yeah, we've got a couple of views of the ship. So when Feder was describing the system there, that was Feder, one of our very talented engineers who was in the video there. He was talking about the fact that the system will be held behind one vessel during the extraction. And the vessel we're getting the images from is the one that's going to pull the plastics on deck. So this is where we have our 4 cameras positioned. So you've got a view all around the deck. So hopefully we get some good angles and some nice shots today. What they're up to at the moment is that they're just preparing to actually start that pulling process. So they've approached the back of the retention zone. They've caught hold of there's a buoy or a buoy, I guess if you're American, on the back of the system. They've got hold of that and they've brought it onto the deck, and they're just getting ready to make that connection and start pulling.
All right, and then it's going to be pulled over the back of the ship here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, when they pull it at first, it acts a little bit like a drawstring on a purse. So all of the plastic is in the back of the retention zone, but when they pull it, it also has the action of kind of closing the retention zone as well. So that's what stops any plastic escaping while we're doing the extraction as well.
And we can see a few people on the back of the ship here. What are they doing?
Yeah, they're just getting ready. So that's the point where they're actually, where the plastic is going to come over there. That's in the bottom right image that you see on the screen. So that's the stern of the ship, the stern roller we call it, and that's where the plastic is going to come over. I actually said I need to go back a step actually because I thought they caught the buoy, but I think they're actually just preparing to grab hold of the buoy there, and the line, the yellow rope that they have on the deck is what they're going to use to pull it on board.
What are the conditions looking like today? I see some blue sky, but I've heard that it can be quite rough out there.
Yeah, it looks really nice today actually. Actually, this is kind of something people ask about because how is the weather out there? Because a lot of the times if you're seeing pictures from what we're able to share on social media, generally it looks really nice out there, like it always generally looks really calm, but a little bit of that is because that's the weather in which we can fly the drones and take nice pictures. So if it's very windy, which it is sometimes, then we're not able to fly the drone. So people don't see that, but it is a deep sea location, and it can get a bit choppy out there.
I think we also have some footage that we could show.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So this is how it looks. This is how it looks sometimes. So we described the location of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch earlier. So we're 1,200 miles from land. We're a long way away. So it's deep, deep sea. And you do occasionally get very big storms that are rolling through this area. So we could end up with waves 8, 9, 10 meters high in the Pacific. Yeah, much higher than buildings or bigger than houses even. So
wow.
Yeah, so enormous waves. We're normally only towing the system in weather up to about 4 or 5 meters because we would start to get damage after that. But we do encounter worse conditions than that.
And what is it like to be on board during these sorts of conditions?
Yeah, if you've been on a roller coaster, it's like being on a roller coaster 24 hours. Then, if you can imagine that or longer, maybe. So you're holding onto the sides of the bed to try and sleep and holding onto your dinner plate as it's sliding around the table and stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of an adventure. You have to have a strong stomach for that.
So when it's good weather like it is today, what is it like to be there?
Yeah, so that's a whole different business, right? And it's a kind of a magical place to be. It's a place where not many people will experience in their lives. We sail 6 days out, so there's a real sense of the remoteness of the location. In fact, in these locations, we very rarely even see other ships that are passing through the area. So extremely remote, extremely isolated, a very sort of natural feel. You'll be able to look in the water, and we see dolphins on the transit. We see as we approach Canada or leave Canada, then there's humpback whales and so on. So you see a lot of wildlife, and then once you're in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, you see albatross or other animals that you're not familiar with seeing when you're much closer to land. So it feels like a very unique environment, and just that clear horizon in every direction for miles and miles and miles it's quite affecting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, what are the crew doing now? We see that there is a rope and they're pointing at a few things.
Yeah, they're just making the preparations on the deck. So before anybody's starting anything, in fact, it looks like they're just having their what we would call a toolbox talk. So they're at the front end of the deck, and they're just running through the different steps of the operation. We talked about that remoteness, and that's also kind of a factor that everybody needs to look after each other because they're a long way away also from any help if anything would go wrong. So they're a very professional team and a very, very close team, and they're working together very regularly. So now they'll just be describing exactly step by step, although it's 100 times that we did this, but they still take the time before we get started to really run through all of the steps that we're going to see, make sure everybody knows what their job is going to be, make sure they know how they're going to communicate with each other and where everybody needs to stand and where they shouldn't be standing. So yeah, they take safety as their top priority, and that's what they'll be discussing now.
That's great. I mean, safety is a top priority. Now, you mentioned that you're out there with the same group of people for quite a long time. How long are you out there for at one go? Yeah,
so I've been out with the ocean cleanup in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch twice. I have a long history of sailing before that, but I was out 2 times with the ocean cleanup. They were both 6-week trips, so that was you know, that was already a quite a long time to be away from friends and family and away from land. This year we're doing 7-week trips, so we had a discussion with the crew that would be really beneficial for the ocean cleanup if we could get extra time in the field and relatively less time doing the sailing. And the crew kind of listened to that and were flexible and kind of accommodated that, which is really appreciated. So that's enabled us to get that extra time. But yeah, in return for that, they are now in fact spending 7 weeks away from land and away from friends and family, and a little bit isolated as well. And it really is that we sail out, and then 7 weeks later we come back. So it's the vessels that we're operating are not calling in port every 2 days or every week or something like that, where people would have an opportunity. So it's really that we go out, and then it's the whole 7 weeks before they come back. So yeah, it can be a tough environment for people. Yeah.
All right, now let's just take a moment to watch these scenes play out. We'll put the cameras full screen and we'll be back with you shortly. Now, while the team is still setting up some things offshore, we have a little bit of time ahead of us before the next moment. So let's take some time to understand the problem a little bit better. We're here taking plastic out of the ocean, but some of you might not know that much about ocean plastic pollution. So let's cut to a video that explains that now, and we'll be back with you shortly.
This plastic bottle cap didn't begin life here. It had to travel a long way to reach the middle of the ocean. How does plastic end up here? And where does it go? Plastic is one of the largest threats our oceans face today. And over the past 10 years, our scientific understanding of the problem has evolved a lot. This is how we understand ocean plastic pollution today. Plastic is a cornerstone of our modern civilization. Every year, we produce more than 400 million tons of it. That's about the same as the weight of all human beings on planet Earth. The amount of plastic we're producing is growing exponentially, yet only a tiny fraction of it makes it to the ocean. Most of the plastic is only used briefly and discarded afterwards. The majority is safely collected and prevented from moving around freely in the environment. More than half of it goes to landfills, and the rest is incinerated or recycled. However, about 20% is either not collected, improperly disposed of, or ends up as litter. Plastic usage and waste management infrastructures differ all over the world. People in high-income countries consume the most plastic, but the waste management systems there are usually effective. Whereas in many low-income countries, plastic consumption is low, meaning emissions remain low even if the waste management infrastructure is lacking. The majority of plastic emissions come from middle-income countries, whose plastic usage is growing, but that are lacking adequate waste management systems to deal with the increase in consumption. Most of the plastic stays on land. But let's say a bottle was left on a city street, close to a river. Suddenly, it starts raining heavily and the wind picks up. In these conditions, our bottle has a real chance of ending up in the river. During storms and other heavy rain events, plastic emissions can increase as much as tenfold. Rivers are the arteries that carry the plastic from land to sea. But not all plastic that ends up in rivers will make it to the ocean. Many plastic objects sink or get stuck in the river system. The closer the plastic is to a river, and the closer that river is to the ocean, the greater the chances that the plastic will reach the ocean. Therefore, coastal cities in middle-income countries are the world's plastic emissions hotspots. A recent study shows that 1,000 rivers worldwide represent almost 80% of plastic emissions into the oceans. So let's say our plastic bottle ended up in one of these rivers and is on its way out to sea. Most floating plastic doesn't stay in the ocean. About 80% will beach on a coastline within a month. Some of it may be washed out to sea again, but coastlines are the final resting place for most plastic that enters the oceans. This can have serious consequences for the coastal environment, the fishing and tourism industries, as well as resulting in heavy cleanup costs for coastal communities. Some plastics will stay afloat, but another fraction will sink, such as our PET bottle, for example. While the bottle itself sinks, the cap will stay afloat for much longer, polluting our coastal waters. It can take years for a plastic piece to break free from these coastal waters and be carried out to the open ocean. But once it's out there, it can stay there for a long, long time. Plastic accumulates in huge subtropic oceanic areas called gyres, massive circular currents that trap the plastic for decades, if not centuries. There are 5 gyres in our oceans. The most polluted and best studied is the infamous Great Pacific Garbage Patch, located in the North Pacific Ocean between Hawaii and California. Today, around 100 million kilograms of plastic float in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, with a plastic count of about 1.8 trillion pieces dispersed over the ocean. The area of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is estimated to be twice the size of Texas. That's triple the size of France or Thailand. Rivers are the main source of ocean plastic pollution, but there is a second source: fishing gear. While most plastic in coastal waters comes from land-based sources, the garbage patches are different. In fact, about 80% of the plastic in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch comes from fishing activities at sea. Fishing equipment lost or dumped at sea has a much higher chance of accumulating offshore because it is emitted away from coastlines, and fishing gear is designed to survive in the water for long periods. About 92% of the floating plastic mass in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch consists of larger objects. Only about 8% are microplastics. Plastic pollution doesn't go away by itself. The oldest pieces found date back to the 1960s. Degradation is very slow, but constant, so the largest objects are a ticking time bomb, breaking down over time and raising levels of microplastics exponentially. Animals often consume plastic particles, mistaking them for food. Not only is this incredibly damaging to the animals, but this allows toxic chemicals to enter the human food chain, potentially impacting the health of around 3 billion people who rely on seafood as their primary source of protein. Plastic pollution in the ocean is a planet-sized problem. As we've seen, every year more than 400 million tons of plastic is produced. However, less than 0.5% ends up in the ocean. Most plastics stay on land. Ocean plastic pollution is highly concentrated and comes from only a small number of possible leakage points. This is the best understanding of ocean plastic pollution to date. As research continues, with hundreds of scientists around the world working on this issue, we are bound to discover even more in the years to come.
To share a bit more about our ocean program, I am joined by Joel, our ocean director. Joel, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you've been with the Ocean Cleanup for over 7 years, so you've seen every iteration of our ocean technology. What was it like to step into the role of ocean director a couple of years ago?
Very exciting, and it's such a mission that we're on, and living through that and working with the iterations, and now heading a team of such talented people, working with so many great partners, and working our way through the challenge that we face, and then reaping all the plastics out of the oceans. It's very exciting to be part of that, and especially in this role.
And where are we currently at with our ocean technology?
So we know the technology works. You can see it here. The system that we built that catches plastics, the operations work. We know what type of vessels we need for this operation. So we're in a good place. We can always improve, and we will. So we're now nearing the point that we can scale up. I think one element there is also the hotspot hunting, so knowing and understanding where the plastics is, so you can effectively take it out. So there's still a lot to do, but we've covered a long way in getting to a point to clean the ocean.
And could you explain a little bit more about the targets we're trying to reach in terms of performance? Boyan already mentioned a couple earlier.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on those?
So it's important, if you want to catch plastics, you have to be in the water, and you want to be in the water as long as possible, because then you can catch. And when you're in the water, you want to do it as effective as possible. So you want to encounter as much plastics as you can. So that means knowing where the plastics is, where those hotspots are, where you can find the most. And then operate at the optimal span, so the distance between the two vessels, and the optimum speed. So that's going very slow, but still you want to have all the factors optimized as much as possible, and then have as least disturbances in the operation as you can, so that the system doesn't break down, no issues, then we're happy to go. So basically getting everything right, that's what it's about.
That's a big learning process.
It is, because the sea is unforgiving. If it's not good and you put it in the ocean, you're sure that it will break down.
And what are we learning in terms of the optimal catch sizes? Is it better to have more frequent smaller catches or less frequent larger catches?
So it's probably balancing out a bit. So you want to be in the water as much as possible. So you want to have good turnaround times that the deck can be, or that the system can be back in the water to tow. And you can see as well in the pictures, in the live pictures, that the deck isn't too big, or sort of, it's big, but you fit all the plastics on it. If it's too much, then you cannot walk, you cannot work safely around it. So it cannot be, it must be related to the size of the vessels as well. So we're now probably between 10 and 15 tons. That's probably the optimum for the operation that we are in now.
Okay, and how many extractions would you have during a typical trip?
Ooh, that varies probably between, between 3 and 8, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And why would it, what would make it 3 and what would make it 8?
Exactly. So the weather plays a important factor. The length of the trip, the longer you're out there, the more you can catch. What kind of disturbances you may have, like technical breakdown, that can happen. And also whether there's interaction with marine life, or you observe something, then you may want to extract. So it's also responding to what is happening, and also when the system is full, you want to bring it on board and get it sorted for recycling.
And so are those the main reasons when you would decide to extract?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Now, it looks and sounds so simple, but in reality, it's very complex, and there's a lot of calculating and thinking that goes into these operations. Could you share a little bit about what makes them so unique?
Yeah, so it is a unique system in the world. It's so long, it's 2.2 kilometers. Imagine just walking that. It's really big. So you have to get everything right. It's also very remote. So everything that you need for this operation, you have to have on board, because there's no way to get there in time to get things sorted. The sea is unforgiving, so if something fails, then you're in trouble. So you have to also have your backup plans in place, and also everything needs to come together. So you see how many folks there are on the ships. They need to work as planned, and also know what to do and get it right, and do that safely, of course. So we have a lot of talented crew working out there, doing a great job. But basically, your plan has to be executed well remotely, and the system needs to do well. And then we need to bring the catch on board. So a lot needs to come together. 40 folks on the ships, then we have so many partners and people working together to get this done. It's a lot. And everything needs to work. If something doesn't work, then you need to solve it.
It sounds complex.
It is, but we want to, we get better at it. And I think this also marks, right, it's the 100th extraction. We're getting better and better and better at it. So complex, but in the end, you can fix it.
So what are some of the areas that you're most excited about making progress in?
I think the technical development that we're in now, so we're improving the system and our operations. We're doing that trip by trip by trip. So that's always exciting to see whether what you have thought of, whether that works at sea as intended. So that's part of the excitement. The other thing is the hotspot hunting, so the continuous modeling of where the plastics is, how it behaves, whether we can find that in our day-to-day operation. And then finally, when you wrap that up together, those ingredients, the system and the operation work, and we know where the plastics are, then we get to the next phase of scaling up. So we know that we need multiple systems to rid the world's oceans of plastics, and in this case, the Pacific. You need multiple systems. So that's the next episode that we're embarking on in the near future. So those are the elements that excite me.
Well, it sounds exciting to me as well. So thank you, Joel. That was insightful.
Thank you.
Now, I think let's go back to the live feed and see what's happening there, see if we're a little bit further along in the program. Glenn, what do you think? What is happening now?
Yeah, so I jumped ahead a little bit earlier, I think, in that step I was talking about earlier that I walked back on a little bit is the one that we're going through now. So that orange buoy or buoy that is coming on deck now, that is the very, very end of the retention zone. So the retention zone has this arrangement of ropes that we can use to pull it on board, and then this buoy is extended out from the back of the retention zone, and that's just to give a nice big clearance between the vessel when it makes its approach and the retention zone. So they've got hold of that. They're not going to pull the whole thing in by hand, of course. They're just picking up this small light rope at the end, and then they're going to clip. Once the main rope is on board, they'll connect that to the yellow line that they have lying on the deck there, and then it's time to pull.
All right. And how does this look to you, Joel? Have you seen the live extractions many times before?
I have seen a couple of live extractions before. And still, as I'm sitting here now, I still feel sort of the excitement over my back, a little tiny bit higher temperature. And it is because it's a great achievement. I've been working here for 7 years. So every time this excites me, but it's also tragic that we have to do this, right? It's so much trash out in the ocean, so it's satisfying to see that we take it out. So, and it's a huge achievement by so many talented folks to get to this point. So
it is a bit that mix of emotions, right? And especially when you see the plastic come out on the deck. And then in a certain way, of course, you're satisfied and happy because that's something we've achieved together and the plastic is there. But when you see how much stuff is out there and how much stuff has been released into the environment, it is sad to see as well, right? So it's this kind of, you get both of those.
Yeah. And there's also the element that when you see that will be not too long, you see the thing coming on deck, and then there's, okay, how much is this gonna be, and what, it's that anticipation of the moment when it all is landed on deck, that's, it gives me the thrills.
Yeah, exciting moments. So what can we see now?
Yeah, this is just a continuation of that process. So for people who are not like super familiar with the way marine operations work, it's not a super high speed process. So that's something that we're just going to kind of slowly bear with as we go. They're going to do it right. They're going to do it safe, and they're going to take the time they need to do it. And of course, the ship is a huge, heavy thing as well. So everything's moving like a little bit slower than you're used to seeing on land. But that's just the nature of marine operations. So. Like I said, they're going to take the time they need to do it, which is how we need to do it. The line that's coming out of the water there, so the bit I was talking about earlier, the actual rope that they're going to pull, which is on the back of the retention zone, that's what they're starting to bring on board now.
Are they pulling that on just with their own strength?
Yeah, they are at the moment because there's no weight that they're pulling at the moment. It's literally just this line in the water, and the line itself floats. So they're just, if they're leaning back, it's just to make sure they're in a safe position, and then they're just picking up this line ready to make the connection. Okay.
Now, Joel, you mentioned the hotspot hunting.
Yes.
During this trip, were we in a good sort of location with a hotspot, as we would say?
Yes. So we have two main models that we're using, and they were overlapping. So basically, the models were saying, "Hey, you're in a good spot," and then you have to imagine it took about these models have been developed for the past decade, and will evolve. And getting to the data, and basically you get feedback with every extraction, like how much plastics have you encountered and taken out. That allows us to update the models and improve it as well. So this trip, it's very good that those models interact, and I know that we have been in good positions. We also monitor with cameras, and the crew offshore monitors how much do we see, what's our daily observation. And I think we also have reacted this trip to what we observed and whether we think we can be in a bit better position. It also has been a bit stormy, so that also allows for careful routing. So basically on a daily basis, they evaluate what's the best position to be tomorrow and in the next couple of days. So it's an iterative process, and and we have some very clever folks working on those models. It is next level.
I'm very glad to hear that. Glenn, maybe you could share with us what is it like to be offshore? What is a day in the life offshore?
Yeah, of course, it's very different for all the different people that we have on board. So there's about 20 people on board, as Joel was mentioning earlier, on each ship, and a huge range of different roles. And I'm sure we'll talk in a bit more detail about those as the stream goes on. But yeah, the activities for anybody are unique to that. When I was on board, then because I had a long background with the project, of course, then I had a bit more familiarity with the procedures. And it's really about receiving. So you wake up, we're on 10 hours time difference with the onshore. So the onshore organization has had a whole day while you were sleeping, and they've often had a chance to process any questions that you sent to them the previous night when they were just starting to wake up. So when you wake up on board the ship, then you get into the communications that you've had from the onshore team while you were sleeping. There's a daily call that we speak to them every day. It's always nice to check in with them and see how they're doing, and then we can also the onshore team can speak to the offshore team and give answers to any questions. And from there, it depends what's planned for the day, and that it really is different. Although we are in a phase now where we've reached reasonably stable operations, so we're out and we're towing. We're no longer in the sense that we have been in the past testing System 3, because System 3 is now it's been refined still, it's being optimized, but it's developed. Let's say it's now in operation. So the towing of System 3 is reasonably standard day to day, but there's always all kinds of different activities that are going on around that. We're constantly doing research activities, if that's research into the plastic that's around the vessel. We're also doing environmental research activities, so that might be factored into the day. And even if the main part of the system itself is now well developed, we're constantly introducing new components, or trialing new methods of doing things on the system. So we'll also be taking observations on those things through the day. We'll be checking in on all those different pieces of equipment that we've put on. So that can form a lot of the time as well. And then it's wrapping up all of that information and sending it back to the onshore team. And then they wake up and we go to bed, and then it happens all over again. And then that goes on for a few days, and like I say, these extraction moments are the things that kind of break that cycle, because we're catching, and then this is the time to do something really different and get the plastic on board.
All right. Now, we could just hear some noise from the winch, I presume. We can see that the rope is moving, so it looks like we're about to see some action. Yeah, so it'll take a little bit of time before the retention zone itself starts to come on, but they're pulling now on that pickup line, and like I was saying earlier, that it has two functions, or it has two effects. So one is it's used to pull everything on board, but also when we pull it does, like I said, it acts like a drawstring on a purse. So when you pull it, it's gonna having like a closing effect on the retention zone and seal all of the plastic effectively in the back of the retention zone so that it doesn't escape when it comes on board. It's definitely the last thing that we want.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So is this the beginning of the retention zone here with the buoy?
Yeah, so there's that buoy is holding up the ropes at the back of the retention zone, and then we should start to see it come on within the next few minutes.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. Let's just watch these scenes play out for a little bit, and we'll be back with you shortly. We're back, and we're about to explain some of the things that you can see happening on the screen. Glenn, in the shot before, you can't really... Oh, you can see it now. You can see the vessel in the top right-hand corner, the other vessel.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah, so they're two ships of the same class, sister vessels we call actually, the same class. So we have Maersk Tender and Maersk Trader out there. So the vessel that we're doing the extraction on, that we're seeing most of the footage of, is Maersk Tender, and then the other one we saw in the distance is Maersk Trader. I think we had that video earlier where Fede, our colleague, was explaining how the extraction process worked, and he described how they bring both ends of this big U-shaped system together and hold it behind one vessel, and then the other one does the extraction. So that holding job is what Maersk Trader, the vessel at the top of the screen, is doing now. They've got both of the ends of the wings on board, and that just means the whole system is held and secure so that Tender can do the extraction. Probably a good question, like, why is it so close? Because we've of course been talking about this this huge system, and System 3 is massive, of course. But we're at the very end of our trip now. We're just getting ready to go back to Victoria. So over the last, I think, 3 days, we've been progressively stepping down in size. We've been recovering the wings of System 3 a little bit each day.
You can't do it all in one go?
No, so, well, it's something that we do in stages, because it basically requires the whole, or most of the crew who are working on the deck are going to come down and be involved in that process a little bit. So they can't work 24 hours, of course. So they work through the day. We make that step down process, and then we're still actually able to tow overnight, even though the system is slightly smaller in size. So we're still getting good use of the time that we're out there in the Pacific. But the system in the last 3 days is becoming progressively smaller. So that's the reason why we can actually see the Trader in the top of the shot now, because if System 3 was at the full length, they would be, way gone in the distance.
And what are some of the things that we can see on the back of the ship? We obviously want to have as much space as possible, but it looks like it's already full with...
Yeah, well, actually, so that recovery process that I was just talking about well, you see them sort of in the top right-hand side of the screen now, and when we get the full deck shot, you see them stacked up on the right-hand side of the deck, port side for the sailors among us. That's the wing modules that were forming parts of the wings. So the wings that we have, they're around 1,200 meters each, but they're made up of sections. So they're made up of what we call wing modules that are around 22, 23 meters long. And the reason for that kind of modular construction is exactly so that we can quite easily and fluidly step up and down in size. We can make the system longer or smaller if we need to. And if a wing module is damaged for any reason, then it's not the whole wing that's affected. We can just take out that one damaged module and close the connection again, and then we can continue working in it. It's not too big of an impact on us. So those modules, the 22, 23 meter modules, they're actually piled up on the side of the deck now. So they're the ones that have been taken out of the system by this vessel in the last couple of days as the system's gradually been made smaller, and they're just in storage ready to go next time. Right.
What about on the left-hand side?
Yeah, so we've got like the 4 images on the screen now. So the other side of the deck, the starboard side of the deck, is what you can see in the top right-hand picture. So we've got kind of, looks like a rack there, and there's kind of big bags that you can see. That is the plastic that we've caught earlier this trip, so that's all in storage there. These big bags, well, big bags, we call them goodie bags, affectionately known as goodie bags, and we're using those to store the catch when we're taking it ashore. So we'll see the beginning of that process, I guess, towards the end of the live stream, because we'll have the extraction and the plastic on deck. They'll be doing the first stages of their sorting, and they'll put all of the catch that they have into those bags, and then it goes into that rack for storage. And it's like a nice convenient way for us to put the plastics on shore and then later on containerize them, ready to go to recycling facilities.
All right. And now in the retention zone, how many tons can it carry?
Yeah, it's sized probably a little bit bigger than we need it to be probably for our operations, and that just gives us a little bit of reserve capacity. So Joel, you were saying earlier that our target extractions, we're still developing that, but between 10 and 15 tons seems to be a kind of optimal size for us. I think if we needed to, we could get almost 25 tons in the retention zone. So there's a lot of extra capacity there if we need it. And we're talking about weight, but you know, the different types of plastic that we get has quite a big impact on what amount, what volume of plastic is equivalent to what weight. Really. So the nets and ropes that we catch, and about 60% of the catch we get is probably from the fishing industry or from other shipping industries, is nets and ropes. That tends to be quite high density, so it's all compacted together. So in a small space you get quite a lot of weight. Imagine you have like a big piled up fishing net and it's all tangled up. That's what we see sometimes in the pictures. And that's all, it's pretty solid plastic at that point. But if you have a crate or a box or a basket, there's a lot of air inside that as well. So if the retention zone was only full of crates, then you could have a lot of volume. You would look like you had a lot of plastic in there, but the weight might be less. But over time, Joel, sorry, I think the ratios I think have been very consistent over time, right? The split between fibrous plastic and rigid plastic.
Correct. Yeah. So we indeed about 80% what we find is basically fishery related. What we found and taken out of the garbage patch, and that has been consistent. And also we adopted our methods to sorting it on deck. So we have some additional machinery, like a little excavator. You will come also into play later. And the goodie bags, they also have been an evolution. It was first stored in containers only, and I think that there's also a compactor that's visible there in blue and orange, a bit in the distance. So that's designed to compact not those fibers, those nets and ropes, but it's to compact the rigid plastics like crates. And also there, some things earn their nickname. So this is Mr. Jingles.
The compactor,
the compactor is Mr. Jingles.
How did it earn that name?
So when the ocean system, the first ocean system came about, it was nicknamed Wilson, after Tom Hanks movie, and the Tom Hanks movie theme that has been relevant throughout, and Mr. Jingles refers to one of those movies as well. So that's from The Green Mile, and his Mr. Jingles,
And how useful is Mr. Jingles?
Pretty useful, and it's sort of also there you see the evolution that also we're incorporating it into our way of working, and also see how we can improve and develop that. And so this is the second iteration, and also we're adopting how we can work with that.
Okay. Now I have a couple of comments here from our socials.
Cool.
The first one is, there are so many steps to consider. It's an amazing feat of engineering and collaboration. Definitely true.
Yes, and also that's a team at the Ocean Cleanup, but we're relying on like the folks on the deck, all the suppliers that come together for all those components and all those innovations that need to come online, work together. There's so much that we owe to so many folks. So a lot comes together. So agree with the compliment.
And another one is, you can't see plastic floating in the water. Is it all spread out?
Yeah, it definitely is. We talked a little bit earlier about what the Great Pacific Garbage Patch looks like, and the fact that some areas are more dense than others. I think it's quite a common misconception that somewhere out there there's this floating island of trash that you can almost walk upon, and you never see that anywhere. So that doesn't exist anywhere. It's super spread out, and what you see now, even in the areas where there's lots of plastic in the water, when you just look out at the surface of the water the first time, you just take a quick glance, this is how it looks. You very rarely see, huge concentrations of plastic. It just looks like normal ocean. And I think it's only when you just, you stand and watch for a minute, and then you say, there's a piece, there's a piece, there's a piece. And then the closer you get, the more you see almost, and then kind of your eyes suddenly adjust and you realize, it's really everywhere. it's spread through the first few meters of the depth as well, I think is an important thing to say. So the plastic, although it's buoyant, it's not all floating directly on the surface. It's spread through the first few meters, which is why System 3 is several meters in depth. So a lot of the plastic that we catch is just under the surface. So it's not visible directly now, but it is there.
Okay. And it looks like we have the retention zone slowly coming over the back of the ship, step by step. What do you think?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's exactly what this is. So normally when you see us towing, if you see any, or if people see any pictures of, that we've put out of the retention zone, because the system is towing forwards, all of the plastic is pushed to the back of the retention zone. But actually, the reverse thing happens when we pull it on, because we're pulling it from the back, so we kind of push all the plastics to the front of the retention zone. So they have some of that on board already. And then this bulge that you just see on the left-hand side of the screen, that is the kind of mass of plastic that's trapped inside the retention zone that's just ready to come on. This is a really nice moment, actually, when you do this, because for days we've been doing inspections and we try and take a look underwater. We have drones that we use to take a look from above. So we've been watching the amount of plastic accumulate and grow over the preceding couple of days. But of course, it's always a long way away. You know, it's a long way from the vessels, almost a mile, in fact, from the vessels. And this is the first time everybody really gets to see it up close, you know, and then you really get a sense of the scale of what you've caught. So it's a nice moment for everybody who hasn't been up close. And on a personal level, I find the sound extremely satisfying when it comes over the stern roller, because all of this plastic starts to kind of crunch over the stern roller, and then you get this, like, you know, this nice, it's very kind of visceral feeling of this huge mass of tons and tons of plastic that's kind of crunching and grinding its way over the stern roller. And then once it's on, you know, that's it. At that point, it's safe. At that point, you know, it's out of the environment and it's not going to be in the environment again. So that's the threshold that it comes over.
I see. Right, so let's have another look. What's another question that we got? How many extractions are you able to do per year?
So this year we are, we're completing trip 20 now. And we're of course on extraction number 100 today. So on average, as Joelle said earlier, it differs a little bit how many extractions we do exactly per trip, but on average then we're 5 per trip, obviously, with 20 trips and 100 extractions. This year we are doing 5 7-week trips to the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So if it was 25, probably that's about the right kind of ballpark. It might be a few less or more depending on the size of the extractions and the exact circumstances that we get offshore. But that's a guide.
Okay. Yeah. Now there is another question. What are the differences between System 002 and System 03? Is there a System 04 in the works too?
That's a fine question. So System 2, that was 800 meters in length, so this is about 3 times as long. It also started off with wings of 3 meters deep, and that was extended to 4 meters deep for System 3. And also the holding capacity started out at, I think, around 10 tons, if I'm not mistaken, which we also made 25 tons. So everything got bigger for System 3. And where we're now at, with those tests that we've done and are still continuing to learn, we're now progressing to System 4 and making the plans for the next round of improvements. But in general, the thing that we see now with System 3, we want to build on what we know. It's working, it's functioning, we can improve, we will improve. But System 4 will incorporate all those lessons that we've learned till date.
So it won't be radically different?
I don't suspect so. Unless we learn some it could happen that we learn something, hey, we should change a couple of things, and then we do it. We run tests in the background as well, sort of offline from what's happening offshore. We want to take those learnings into account and not stay static with, hey, this is how we do it, we're never going to change. Well, that wouldn't have brought us this far.
That's definitely true.
Yeah, so we're open-minded to those changes, definitely. But I think the more we see success with the system, the more confidence we get also that we're on the right track. So that the changes, I think, become a little bit more subtle in nature as we go. And I was going to say, so that as you mentioned, the increased size is obviously the fundamental difference between System 2 and System 3. 3 times longer, deeper in the water. But the unseen beneath that, there's a whole host of small tweaks and optimizations in terms of how we connect different components to each other, the materials we use, the dimensions of the materials that we use. So really, it's visually it's the same but bigger, let's say. But underneath that, there's it's a real radical improvement, and we see that the tensions that we use when we're towing System 3 are much higher because this enormous system requires much more power to pull, and that means everything also needs to be stronger itself. So the dimensions of everything, the size of everything, and the strength of everything in the system is also much higher in System 3.
Okay. And so we were talking about that we're constantly, iterating the technology and making improvements. Could you share a little bit about what sort of improvements that we've made recently?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even though System 3, the transition from System 2 to System 3 was, really a 2023 focus, as Bojan was explaining earlier. Even between 2023 and now, we've also made a number of upgrades to the system, and again, this is mostly, but not only, reasonably kind of subtle stuff visually, I would say. So if you're looking at the system last year and this year, you would say, okay, that looks very similar. But again, I think that's really just a marker of the fact that the technology is maturing and we're not having to make these radical component changes that we did in the past. We've got some underwater footage on the screen now. I think actually a nice thing that you can see in this image is something that we've been able to kind of undesign, which is also nice. It doesn't have to just be additions, we can also make things simpler. And at the forward end of each wing in the past, we had a tow bar, which was that we were pulling the system along with, and that's been replaced now with this rope arrangement that you just see. So it's a very nice, flexible arrangement. It used to be a big, heavy steel component that our modeling showed us that we needed that for a certain amount of strength in that area. And then as we learn more and as we understand the system better, we realize actually sometimes we've potentially even over-designed things a little bit in the past, and we can take them out, and that's always nice.
It looks like we have some action happening where the retention zone is coming on the deck.
Yeah.
Does it look like this is the moment?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So there was a small pull earlier, and like I say, sometimes we don't see and hear everything from here. So sometimes they need to make an adjustment for something, and then they'll just stop and take the time they need to make that adjustment, so they're ready to go and do it right the first time. So that's what they've done. And this, so on the left-hand side, that's really the plastic that you can see. You see this kind of uneven shape, and that's because it's packed full of all of this plastic.
All right, and so it's going to come on the deck soon.
Yeah, then this is the exact kind of satisfying moment that I was talking about earlier, when it's kind of like crunching over the roller and making, crossing the threshold to safety, let's say.
Does this make you want to be out there?
Absolutely, yeah. It's always sort of, the sea has definitely a great appeal for me, and that's also motivating to make it cleaner and better. Yeah, and I think it's also the size that you see. Like you see a big lump coming on deck, but it's sort of difficult to foresee how it looks on the deck in just a couple of moments, but also how big it is, and because the size of the vessel, it's over 70 meters in length, so it's just special to see, and also great that it's not in the water anymore.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't, you can see that little person on the other side, and they're almost, we haven't seen the full retention zone on the deck yet, but that gives you a little bit of an idea of the scale.
Exactly. Yeah.
But this is an exciting moment.
Yeah. So the retention zone itself is about 5.5 meters wide. The vessel is nearly sort of 16 meters wide. So we're looking at basically the full width of the vessel now across the stern.
Wow.
The camera's mounted really on one side of the vessel, and the crew member that we see on the other side is right against the side on the other. So that's 16 meters. So this thing that kind of starting to fill our screen now, you can get a bit of a sense of scale from that.
All right, and How does the catch look today to you?
Yeah, it looks so. I guess we'll see some videos later of different extractions that we've done. We've done much larger extractions than this in the past because we've gone. I think our biggest one has been over 18 tons, or 18,000 kilos of plastic in the past. This will be much less today, and that's just a function of the fact that we've been stepping down the system in the last days, and we're ready to complete the trip now. So it's been this is the kind of the remainder at the end of the trip in the last days, and we've been operating a gradually smaller system as we've been reducing in size. That said, still pretty happy with what I see coming on board now. It's as we say, once you get a sense of scale and you realize that we almost can't see the guy standing at the back now, it's not a small amount of plastic at all. This is a huge, it will be tons and tons and tons. So yeah.
So what's going to happen next?
We're going to bring this on board. You can see already actually on the left hand side of the screen that there's a bit with no plastic in, and that's on the other side of this closure mechanism. So we'll bring all of the plastic on board, and it'll be pulled forward on the deck, kind of to. You see a white line running, a white painted line running across the deck there. So they'll pull it forward of that, so that it's all well and truly on board and on the deck. And then they'll need to actually disconnect it from the bit of the system which is in the water, and we need to disconnect it so that we can pick it up and empty it. But before we disconnect it, it needs to be safely secured. So we're going to pull it on. They're going to make a few connections on the deck, and that's going to mean that it's like kind of more or less fixed in place, and it can't slip out again. And that's going to make it safe for the guys on board to go. And basically split this section from the part that's in the water, and then we'll release the part in the water, and then we'll only have the plastics on deck, and we'll be able to do the dump, the emptying.
All right, exciting. Now, while the crew are getting prepared and making some adjustments, we have a little bit of time to talk about some other topics. So right now is a good time to check in on what's happening on social media. We will cut to the social team, and we will be back with you shortly.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in on this special day for us as we're extracting plastic from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch for the 100th time. Now, if you follow us on social media, you've probably seen that ever since the beginning of our offshore operations, we share updates, ups, downs, progress of what's happening over there in our operations. And of course, among those updates is the infamous extraction clips that you might have seen, where we pull the retention zone on deck, as you've just seen happening right now. We pull it up and we release the plastic. And every time we share this, pretty much, our community is asking to see it live. So here we are, bringing you closer to the action that's happening right this moment, about 2,400 kilometers from civilization. And I'm so excited to see so many of you joining online. I'm monitoring the comments, and I see people from Germany, India, Colombia, Hawaii. Someone wrote they're tuning in from Sydney, Australia, where it's about, I think around 4 a.m. So thanks guys so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you here, and we're monitoring your comments as well. So do let us know what you would like to hear more about. I see you've already been asking a little bit about what happens with the plastic, for example. What are some of the interesting catches we've gotten from the ocean? I have some examples here, but stay tuned. We'll bring on some of the crew members to tell you a little bit more about that later in the program. But now it's been such an exciting moment to actually see the retention zone on deck. So we finally got that first glimpse of what's in there, the amount of plastic that's been caught after the last week or so of towing in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And I want to introduce something that we like to do internally at our office, which is guessing the catch game. And this is something that I think our crew is also doing back in the office today, so we want you to join in this action. Basically, how you do is scan the QR code or type in the link that you see on the screen or pinned in the YouTube comments and enter your guess. How much trash do you think is in there? Of course, maybe it can be a little bit difficult to guess the weight after seeing just that big bulge of plastic on deck, so I want to help you out a little bit to show some examples of our previous extractions. So one example, this is an extraction we did in September last year, and this is actually our largest single extraction ever, and this was over 18 tons of plastic, or 18,000 kilos. Now, another one here, I don't know if you can see, we have a little crew member there for reference. And this catch was over 11,000 kilograms. And you see it dropping. This is a moment you will also get to see a little bit later in the program. And one of our most recent ones, this was from April this year. And this was around 7 tons of plastic out of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. So, once more, now it's your turn. I hope you will join us in taking a guess. We will be having this form open till the end of this live stream, so choose your moment wisely. You can enter once. Do you already have a guess? If not, you can wait for the extraction for the plastic release on the deck and place your guess there. So yeah. Choose your moment. From what I see, I've seen a lot of these extraction videos before. I would guess somewhere around 7 tons, but I've only seen it online, so I'm very curious to hear what Glenn's guess would be, since he's seen it actually in real life previously.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. We've seen plenty of these, and we're watching them all the time. I think it's a reasonably good guess to say it could be around 7 tons or 7,000 kilos, that would be. I think because we've been stepping down in size the system in the last few days, we're definitely not going to be in the very high end, or we're never expected to be in the very high end of the biggest extractions we've ever done. I think, yeah, somewhere 4,000, 5,000 will be a very low estimate, and then sort of 8,000 might be a high estimate. So if people are in kilos, that is. So if people are in that range, then they would stand a chance of being right. Make sure you go to 4 digits, as I would say, because somebody's always got to be 1 kilogram closer than everybody else. We do this on the ship as well, actually, and generally there's like a Mars bar for the winner or something like that. But it doesn't sound like a big prize, but it's a fairly heated competition.
So what are we seeing now?
So now this is on board now. So the plastic is now safe. So that's the plastic that was in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and never will be again. So that's a fairly satisfying feeling. It's all on board now. I talked about them having to make those connections to hold everything in place, so that they could release the part that's holding the plastic from the rest of the system. So they're making those connections at the back of the vessel now. We can't see them actually because it's behind the huge pile of plastic that we've just brought on. And they're just preparing to make that disconnection.
All right. And a little bit earlier, you were just telling us about some of the system improvements that we've made.
Yeah.
Would you like to share the rest of those?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we can talk about a few more. We talked about the tow bars then that were replaced or removed from the front of the wings. And I was discussing when Joel was still with us, we were discussing a bit about the small improvements that are made in order to make the system a little bit more resilient. So I think that's probably a fine example of the stuff that really goes unseen. Or it's difficult to notice if you just see the big system, but it's something that our project engineers spend a lot of time on. You see some images now of people making repairs. So these are really like close-ups of the fine detail of the system, and if it looks like nets and ropes, then of course it is. But every one of these ropes has been the material has been chosen, the construction of the rope has been chosen, the strength of the rope has been chosen. The way, if it's tied in a knot, then the specific knot that we're using has been chosen and tested and iterated between different options. Also using the expertise of our suppliers, also using experience from other industries in the past. So every single small detail of the construction has been very carefully analysed and improved over time as well. So we're using a lot of construction methods on the system now in terms of how all these nets and ropes are put together. Which are different, subtly different from what we were doing with System 2 and even what we were doing with System 3 last year. And what that's given us is a system which, when you zoom out, looks very similar. but is actually much more resistant to damage, especially in the worst weather conditions that we see in the winter, and then to a lesser extent in the spring and the autumn.
All right. And now in terms of the operation, is everything going according to plan?
Yeah, on deck it all looks, it's all as we would expect to be going on deck at the moment. Like I said, they're making those securings on the deck. So that's exactly where they should be at this point.
Good.
What we can't see just with the rest of the retention zone then is on the left-hand side. So that's just a little bit out of shot. It's further forward. But you were asking about improvements there, but the retention zone in general is an area where we've made a lot of improvements and modifications. I think we're going to have Maira talking later about some of the environmental mitigations that we've put on the system. But yeah, the images that you see at the minute, this kind of yellow, this yellow float that's in the middle looks like a little bit like a yellow raft that's kind of sitting on top of the system. That's one of the main focuses of our environmental measures that we have on the system. It's solar panels on the top, but it powers and provides communication for all of the cameras and lights that are built into the retention zone, and they're all there for monitoring to see if what is our environmental impact at any moment in time. We get full underwater visibility throughout the retention zone, and yeah, the lights also so that we have that at night time as well. So that's a reasonably complex component. And that's another good example of improvements that we've made between last year and this year, because that in the harsh environment of the sea, having electronics communicate with something and stream video footage to something which is a mile away, which is the vessels, is quite a complex thing to get right. So we're always making small improvements and making these skiffs, these camera skiffs, the rafts that we're looking at, make them stronger, make them more resilient, improve the cables that we're using. Everything, like I said, down to the construction of a cable is something that's thought about and designed, and we try different options. So the cameras themselves, getting the right options, getting the right communication methods and stuff, it's really in very fine detail, and some specialized teams working on every aspect of these little things.
So it's quite a data-driven operation, and so we need to get the right data. So we actually have a scientific research team that is carrying out research and pushing the boundaries of research. They're now looking at how to detect plastic from space. So let's watch a quick video about that, and we'll be back with you soon.
My name is Robin de Vries. I work in the research team of the Ocean Cleanup, and we are developing a fundamental understanding of the plastic problem in the seas and in the rivers. And my task is to develop new technologies to remote sense plastic, and that means to detect plastics without actually going into the water. Doing research, especially offshore, is very costly. Gathering samples by hand or flying airplanes to do surveys. So satellites can be a very cost-effective tool to globally monitor plastic and to discover trends and accumulations that we haven't discovered yet. So this recent project is called the SPOTS project, which is an acronym for Spectral Properties of Submerged and Biofouled Plastic Litter. And it's funded by the European Space Agency. Basically, you can detect plastic by looking at it with a special type of sensor, which is called a hyperspectral sensor. And this type of sensor, it creates a fingerprint of the plastic that you're trying to observe. You might be familiar with a prism. When you shine light through a prism, it refracts the light into different places, and you can see a rainbow on the other end. And hyperspectral sensor is essentially doing the same thing. It takes the light as a whole and splits it up into a rainbow and beyond, because the rainbow is only what you see with the naked eye, but then the actual hyperspectral parts that come beyond it are also very important for plastic detection. And so each type of plastic has its own unique fingerprint. In order to make a good assessment of what plastics are visible under what conditions, first of all, we had to think about what plastics are we going to test for. And so we decided to create a standard set of samples, which consists of 8 different types of plastic at 3 different thicknesses. Secondly, we had to design our own measurement tool. And this consists of a water tank in a lab that allows the plastic to be clamped and to be put into different depths of water while the sensor is scanning for the signal. And another important aspect is that when we collected these measurements, we want to put them to the test eventually. And that means we test it into a real environment, which is the sea. We've collaborated with the University of Aegean, and we decided to build a plastic target in the coastal waters of Greece and to fly a drone over it carrying a hyperspectral sensor. And this was actually the world's first effort on doing hyperspectral drone flights over water. And we collected this very unique data set, putting essentially our method to the test. Thirdly, we also collected samples of biofiled plastics. So these are plastics that have algae, bacteria, and other organisms growing on them. And for that, we recently conducted those tests in Hawaii, where we also had to construct a customized water tank. So it's 3 different sets of measurements at 3 different locations, leading to a very comprehensive data set and library. The outcome of this study is really that we have a better understanding of the capabilities of satellite remote sensing for plastic. And we know a little bit better when plastics are detectable by satellite and when not. Next steps forward to this project are really to make data public so that other researchers, other scientists can make use of the library that has been created. In a way, this is a project that has been really testing the limits of satellite remote sensing. So instead of focusing what can be done and creating a cool proof of concept, we've really tried to explore when this method would fail, actually. And we can demonstrate that in the data. When plastic gets deeper and deeper into the water, this whole fingerprint disappears. And it's pretty cool to be showing the limits of technology. It might not be a very popular message, but it's a very useful one to the scientific community, knowing where to venture and where not to. And I think that's a great contribution to science also.
Now we're back, and Glenn was just explaining some of the checks that the team are performing offshore. Glenn, could you explain those to our viewers?
Yeah, so what they're doing now, the choking mechanism, which is what we call that kind of drawstring that was closing off the retention zone to stop the plastic escaping. They're just actually opening that back up again now and giving themselves a bit of space to work so that they can make the disconnection between the 2 parts of the retention zone. So the bit that we saw them pull on, which has all the plastic inside, is going to be disconnected and moved forward to the forward end of the deck, because that's where the cranes are that we're going to use to make the dump, to do to remove all of the plastic from the retention zone. And they're just giving themselves some space to work now. So they'll start to open that up so that they can make the disconnection.
All right, and what sort of profiles do we have in the crew? Could you describe a typical crew composition?
Yeah, all kinds. It takes all kinds of skills, definitely, to do this. We were talking earlier. There's approximately 20 people on each ship, and that goes from the navigation officers who are, let's say, driving the ship, or and operating a lot of equipment as well. Engineers who are keeping everything running and keeping everything moving, down to cooks and stewards who are keeping everybody fed. And then we of course have our kind of what we call a project crew on board as well, and that ranges from people who have a long background with offshore projects like this, who are working in management roles on board, and then specialists as well, project engineers, specialists in electronic systems that we have on the system, who do maintenance and repair work on those and look after all the computer systems. We have people who are experts in the steering or the hotspot hunting that we were talking about earlier, that are like really looking into the maps, density maps on board, and steering the systems. And then we have environmental teams on board as well. We have, I think at the moment, 4 environmental personnel on board. who are doing observation work, but they're also assessing some of the environmental measures that we have built into the systems to see if we can improve those going forward. And then occasionally we also have experts, not every trip, but sometimes experts in the construction and maintenance of the retention system as well. So it goes from like, you know, a lot of the guys that you see on deck are multi-skilled and are working on all different kinds of vessels, and they have the skill to work in different kinds of operations, through to people who are very specialized with working with particular systems.
I see. And one that you mentioned was some environmental specialists.
Yep.
And environmental safety is a big topic for us. It's actually our top priority. So we have a number of environmental measures in place to protect the environment. And I'd like to talk about these with one of our environmental experts, Maida. Welcome, Maida.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So you were a researcher and professor before joining the Ocean Cleanup, and you taught marine ecology at the Rio Grande Federal University in Brazil, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so while the rest of the team is trying to catch as much plastic as possible, you and your team are trying to catch as little of anything else, right?
Exactly. So the mission of the Ocean Cleanup is to rid the world's oceans of plastic, but do so in an environmentally sound way. So the environmental team in the Ocean Cleanup is trying to make sure we do that, we achieve this goal, and that means catching nothing but plastic.
And you were offshore last year on one of our first trips with System 3. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, sure. I was in Trip 18, which was the last trip of 2023, and one of the first was System 3. And honestly, it was just an amazing experience. It was very important for me to apply to my job as environmental manager, so to actually see the operations happening, to witness everything, how it works, participate in all the steps. It was really very important for me. And also, it was just such a unique opportunity to be at this remote area where basically nobody ever goes, and you're just surrounded by ocean and sky and wildlife, and it's just so special and so beautiful. And yeah, definitely worth protecting.
Could you explain to us what sort of animals we're trying to protect?
So at the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, you have several different types of animals, such as marine mammals like whales and dolphins. We have sea turtles, seabirds, fish, sharks, so a wide variety of different animals that are out there. And by removing the plastic that's at the garbage patch, we're helping protect these animals. And not only at the garbage patch, but also at other areas where the plastic can reach, such as the Hawaiian Islands or even the seafloor below the garbage patch, because the floating plastics with time can eventually sink and reach the seafloor. So by removing the floating plastic, we're also potentially helping protect deep sea ecosystems that are in the North Pacific.
It's very important.
Yeah.
And what sort of harm does plastic pollution cause to animals in the ocean?
So plastic pollution can cause several different impacts, but the main impacts that we see out there are basically entanglement. So when the animals become trapped in some kind of plastic and can't move, can't eat, sometimes can't breathe, and can eventually die. So that's basically entanglement in ghost nets. Another very significant impact is ingestion. So when animals eat the plastic, and that can cause injury, internal injury, malnutrition, and other biological effects that can also eventually lead to their death. And another impact that's a little less known, but can also be significant, is that animals can grow on the plastic. So they basically act like little rafts that are transporting plastics around, and that means that they can transport species to areas where they shouldn't be, and that can impact local ecosystems. So all of these impacts are what we're trying to prevent.
I see. And so what are some of the environmental measures that we have in place?
Oh, we have a lot of measures in place. We're constantly applying and developing new ones as well. So at the moment, first of all, I think one of the main things operationally is that, as was already mentioned, we tow in very low speeds. So it's basically, slower than you walk, and that makes sure that animals can see the system and move away from it, and it also helps us to, if we spot an animal, move away from it as well. So that's an important mitigation. And if we actually do spot an animal close to the system that's a protected species or some animal that's important, we move away from it and we slow down even more. Apart from that, we have some deterrent mitigations. So
what are deterrents?
That means it's basically warning methods so that the animal will detect the system and move away from it. So that includes sound. a sound pinger. So it emits a high frequency sound that marine mammals can hear, and so they're warned of the system and can move away. And we also have green LED lights that also increase the visibility of the system. So these are meant for the animal to move away from, to see the system and move away from it. We also have observers on board. So as Glenn mentioned, we have environmental crew on every trip, at least 3 people, and they monitor the system 24/7 to detect wildlife and possibly implement any different types of actions that we can implement to make sure the animal is not harmed. Apart from that, some parts of the system have a relatively large mesh size, so the opening of the system of the screens and the retention zone are relatively large to allow smaller animals to pass through. And if an animal does get inside the retention zone, we have escape aids. So basically, we have 3 large gaps in the bottom of the system where the animal can leave on its own. And in case it doesn't leave on its own, we can also activate remotely. So like from the ship, we basically hit a button and a marine animal safety hatch is activated. That basically opens up a large gap in the system that the animal can swim out of.
I think we have some footage of that we could maybe show.
Oh yeah, it's pretty cool. Would be good to see.
Yeah, so this is a view actually inside the retention zone now. So this is, of course, underwater, and we're looking backwards into the area where the plastic would go.
And so that is the marine animal safety hatch closing or opening?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the view of one of the underwater cameras that the observers are looking at constantly. And that is the hatch. So it's basically a bladder that inflates and closes off the system. It's activated remotely, so you have the connection to the vessel where the observers can, activate if there's some kind of emergency. So in this case, it was a turtle inside the system. This is a loggerhead turtle. So the observer activated the marine animal safety hatch. It closes off the back of the system of the retention zone where the plastic is, but creates this large gap where the animal can swim out of. So you can see it's, easily swimming out.
So it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a very cool system, very cool engineering there.
And the nice thing about this is that the process is kind of reversible as well. So the inflation, it's an air inflation that happens to open this gap. And what we'll see now is the reverse of that system. So the deflation happens, and then it basically just puts the system back into the condition it was in when we started, and we can just continue towing. So.
Wow, very clever.
Yeah, it's very cool. So apart from that, I think an important measure that we have to mitigate our operations and mitigate any type of negative impact that we might have is continuous research on the environment, understanding what's out there, and just continuously learning so we can improve operations and make sure our negative impacts are minimal.
That's amazing. Well, thank you, Maeda. Now, it looks like we're still getting ready, doing some checks and preparations. So let's take a closer look at what Maeda's been up to offshore on her trip last year, and we'll be back with our viewers shortly.
So this is the last trip of the year. It's the second trip with System 03, and the main goal is to continue testing its performance and test how it performs in rougher weather, which is, because of this time of year, we have a little bit more rough weather. And we also aim to continue monitoring the wildlife that occurs at the region, and of course continue extracting the plastic. My name is Maeda. I'm environmental manager for the ocean cleanup, basically assuring that we have minimal environmental impact while we clean up our oceans. We are currently in the North Pacific, in an area known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and this is where the cleanup operations are currently targeting. So removing the plastics that are in this large accumulation area. We target hotspot areas, which are basically areas that have a lot of plastic, and this is done by computational modeling. So you use different models that calculate how much plastic is in a determined area. And we have specialists on our team that do these calculations so we can collect plastic in the most efficient way possible. We had our first extraction here 2 days ago, and nothing prepares you for seeing that mountain of trash just coming down out of the extraction section of the system. It's really quite something. It was quite tough, I'm not going to lie. It is a lot of work. It's a very manual work in separating the types of plastics and going through what was almost 12 tons of plastic that was on deck in this last extraction. So it is tough. It's quite manual, laborsome, but it's also very rewarding to see the amount of plastic that were removed from the ocean. The success is usually measured in how much plastic we can remove from the ocean per hour. And another key indicator is how much wildlife is captured along with the plastic. So we attempt to minimize that as much as possible. And that's also something very important when we think about how much plastic we catch. We currently have several different precautions to protect wildlife. The system is equipped with acoustic pingers that emit high-frequency sound that's to warn marine mammals that the system is there and make sure that they swim away from it. We also have green LED lights on the system, which is also a warning measure, so to make the system visible to wildlife. We currently have bottom holes on the retention zone. So the retention zone is basically the net that's at the end of the wings that accumulates the plastic inside it. And on this retention zone, we have 3 large bottom holes that allow wildlife to escape if it winds up inside this retention zone. The system is also monitored 24 hours a day. We have underwater cameras along the retention zone, which are observed by environmental observers to make sure that no protected species, no large fish, no sharks are trapped inside the retention zone. We also have monitoring done through drone flights, so above the water, just to check that there's nothing hanging around the system. In this trip, we've had several encounters with marine life. On the way out here, a lot of dolphins. We had some dolphins bull riding the vessels, which is always very nice to see. That's a very normal interaction with boats. After we arrived at the garbage patch and we started towing, we've also had some interactions. We've had 3 whales hanging around the system for over a day. Not inside the system, they weren't interacting directly with the cleanup operation, but they were hanging around. I guess they were kind of curious. And what we do to avoid any negative interaction in this case is to do continuous monitoring. So the drone was basically all the time flying over, making sure that they don't get closer to the system. And we slow down operations, we make sure to move away from the animals, and in that way we can guarantee that there's no impact. One of the challenging things is that we are 2 separate vessels, so sometimes if we have an environmental event on the other vessel, then we have to communicate very efficiently and make sure that we get everything right. That's a little bit challenging, but so far it has worked out very well. Sorting the plastic is also challenging. It's very cool, it's very exciting, but it's also very tough, like physically tough. So that was also one of the challenges. And yeah, I think that's basically it. I'm looking forward to continue seeing how operations work and hopefully take all of these lessons learned and everything that I see out here to apply it a little bit better to the environmental management and assessments that we do on shore. So I think that's my main takeaway, is to actually see everything in person and use that to improve operations as much as we can environmentally.
We hope you found it interesting to hear about Maeda's work offshore, and now we're back with our live feed to see what's happening there. Now it looks like the crew are still preparing and adjusting everything. So don't forget that you can still guess the weight, and you can do so by visiting the link in the pinned comment in the chat. Glenn, can you describe what we're seeing now?
Yeah, so what we had on the deck there is, it's a continuation of that process earlier where they've made that disconnection. We're going to pick up this section which is containing all of the plastics with the cranes, and that's some of those nice videos that we saw earlier. That's the method that we're going to use to make all the plastic empty out. So just the fact that we're going to lift that, we need to do that carefully and we need to do it right. We need to make sure that there's nothing loose on the system that could fall in an uncontrolled way, and just in general that everything's in good condition and safe to be lifted. So yeah, like we keep saying, they're just taking the time to do it right, and they're going to get it right the first time, and that's exactly how they should be working.
All right, I have a couple of questions here from our socials for you. The first one is, why is it called a retention zone?
The the bit that we've got on deck at the moment is the retention zone, and I guess there's two sides to what we're trying to achieve out there. So there's capturing plastic. We actually refer to capturing plastic as when the plastic crosses the opening of that U shape, so then it's inside the system. But that's only effective, of course, if it remains in the system all the time. So there's various ways it could be lost. I guess in very bad weather conditions, it could go over the top of the barrier. If it's very heavy for some reason, it could go underneath. So we can lose material in that sense. So what we're trying to achieve is to retain it. You know, it comes in, it's captured, and then we're trying to retain it as well. So we're always trying to, in some way, direct the plastic into that retention zone, and that's where the name comes from. It's that closed section at the back of the system, and once the plastic is in there, then it's retained and it's in a position where we can bring it on board.
Well, that makes complete sense.
Sure.
So another question is, how calm do the waters have to be successfully operated in?
It depends on the operation that we're doing, I guess. So the extraction work that we're doing today, you can see that there's components connected to the vessels, large, heavy components coming over the stern of the vessel. So that's fairly sensitive to weather. We can still do it when the waves are 2 or maybe even if it's certain kinds of waves 3 meters high. So that's, that would be if you were trying to swim in that, you would feel that those were very, very big waves. But these are, of course, very capable vessels, so we can still do that work there. When we're towing the system, then we can work at much higher sea states, and we can work up to maybe 5 meters or maybe even slightly more before we start to take action in case the system gets damaged. So it really depends on the work that we're doing.
Okay. We're really lucky to have such a great crew out there to be dealing with all of this, and also to be able to use these vessels. This whole operation wouldn't be possible without our partner Maersk. Without them, we wouldn't even be able to get out into the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, let alone clean up all of these plastics. And even though it says the ocean cleanup on the ships, they're not actually owned by us, but by Maersk. Glenn, how amazing are these ships? I mean, they're perfect for our operations.
Yeah, they really are. We've been talking about the retention system, which is this U-shaped screen that the vessels are towing. But when we talk about the system overall, really, it's the whole thing that forms the operation. So there's the retention system, and then there's these two amazing vessels as well. And they're pulling this enormous thing through the water, which is what we need to achieve to get this economy of scale and the size of the operation that we need. So we need very, very capable vessels that can go into a very isolated, sometimes harsh environment and get the job done. And that's exactly what we have here. They're well equipped for the operations that we have, and the retention system is actually designed to function well with these vessels. So everything is designed hand in hand with each other. Perfect in that regard. But important to note, I would say also that a vessel is only as good as the crew who's on board, right? So in that regard, we're very lucky as well, and they're very capable vessels, but they also operate fantastically by the guys out there. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely. And so basically, this job would be impossible to do alone. And to talk about this, I am joined now by our partnership director, Nisha. Nisha, welcome. So what are some crucial things that we need from partners to help us succeed on this mission?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think the most important thing is to realize that this is a journey. This is something that started in a bedroom with a couple of drawings 10 years ago, and look at us, we're on the ocean, we're doing a live extraction at the moment. So this is really a journey that has evolved, and we wouldn't have been able to do that by ourselves. We are only able to do this because we have partners supporting us. And I think the crucial part is here that everyone is doing their part. So we have corporate partners sharing their knowledge, their expertise, their ships. There are other partners taking off our plastic. There are partners that are contributing with ideas. But let's also not forget about the practical part. Nothing would have been possible if this wouldn't have been funded. So I'm also super excited, and I wanted to say thank you to everyone who's been donating live. I was looking at the chat, and just like donations are coming in. That's super cool. It's where the past 10 years we've been entirely dependent on voluntary contributions, and this is what's making it possible. So thank you for all the donations. Keep them coming. And this is also why we have the partnerships. It's partly financial, it's partly knowledge and expertise, it's partly the in-kind, it's the network, the communications, and the right mix of everything is what makes us successful.
Everything you mentioned there is all so valuable in its own way. So who would be the perfect partner to join our mission at this moment, and why?
I would say almost every partner is perfect because everyone brings something unique which contributes and enhances our mission. So I think we're very fortunate to have this very nice set of partners like Maersk, like Kia, like Glovis, like Coldplay. So we have an extremely nice set of partners. Ideally, we have a mix of everything so that all of the aspects are covered. And ideally, we want to go as fast as possible. We mentioned the ticking time bomb. The faster we can go, the earlier we can scale up, the happier we'll be. So yeah, if we can get that mix, that would be perfect.
And you mentioned Kia, they're one of our global partners.
Yes.
What are some of the things that this partnership brings to help us succeed on this mission?
Yeah, I think talk about perfect partners. This is definitely one of them. One of the key things that makes them the perfect partner for us is the longevity of them. Like they're in it for the long run. They're really signed up for the journey. They're in the journey with us together. So we've been working together for 2 years, but our contract is much longer. So we really have the time to develop the partnership together. Their contribution is partly financial, but even more important, they're off-takers of the plastic. So the plastic that we're currently taking out of the ocean, we're going to use it in their cars and their products. So that journey and helping us to ensure that the plastic doesn't end up in the environment again is super important for us because that completes the picture.
Absolutely. Now, we recently recorded a chat that we had about this unique collaboration between our partnership manager, Ricardo, and Michael Chu from the Global Brand and Customer Experience Division at Kia. Let's hear what they said.
Thank you for being here and welcome, Michael. How are you today?
Hello, Ricardo. Very nice to see you as always. I'd like to start by thanking you for having me today, but also to offer our warm congratulations on yet another significant milestone along your journey. Ricardo, as someone who's been in the automotive industry for the last 2 decades, I've become a true believer in the old adage, seeing is believing.
Yeah, indeed, and I'd like to touch base on that. You have been working long in the automotive industry, and would you like to share why has Kia decided, like a big automotive player, to partner with the ocean cleanup?
Well, us at Kia, this year we're celebrating our 80th anniversary. And obviously there are millions of Kia cars on the roads. So we clearly recognize that we are part of the problem when it comes to environmental pollution. But we also have a clear responsibility to play a proactive role in the solution. When it came to the ocean cleanup, we found that your vision was extremely bold and ambitious, but at the same time very clear. It's something that I think resonates with anyone around the world, regardless of gender, race or religion.
That's great to hear. Indeed, like we signed our partnership in 2022. We are currently entering the 3rd year of our partnership. And would you like to share with our audience the work that we have been doing over the past couple of years together?
You know, the support that we've been providing to the ocean cleanup is multifaceted. Obviously, there's a financial funding portion which goes towards supporting the overall operations of the mission. Secondly, we are providing some in-kind support in terms of mobility and logistics. And thirdly, a lot of our focus in the first couple of years was awareness building, not only about our partnership, but to educate the public of the severity of the problem as well as what our partnership means going forward. But the overarching goal really of this partnership, Ricardo, as you know, is to create a viable circular resource chain for the collected ocean plastic. And so the ocean cleanup and we at Kia are working hard to find the best ways to recycle this plastic and then integrate it into Kia vehicles so that it never enters the natural environment again.
Indeed, like setting up this circular resources stream has been challenging and complex at times. And I think it would be great to expand a bit more on what are the main challenges that we have encountered over the last couple of years and how we tackled and solved them.
Well, I think, as you'll agree, Ricardo, this is really uncharted territory when it comes to plastic recycling. And one of the challenges we found is that the characteristics of the plastic that's taken from the Great Pacific Garbage Patch are very unique, and it makes it very difficult for recycling compared to perhaps general plastic waste or ocean-bound waste that's entering the oceans from the rivers. And that is because a lot of these legacy plastics in the ocean have been there for a long time. A lot of corrosion takes place, so it's very difficult to process when it comes to recycling. Another challenge we faced is that there's a very strict certification process we must go through when it comes to verifying the origin as well as the material integrity of the recycled plastics. So this adds a layer of complexity, I think, to the overall process, maybe adds a little bit more required time to the process. But at the end of the day, the customer benefits because they will be able to trace back that piece of plastic to its origin, as well as follow its onward journey from that point forward. And then finally, you know, this is more of maybe more of an internal issue here at Kia, but we have very strict standards when it comes to product quality and efficiency. And so given the unique characteristics, as I described, of the ocean plastic, a lot of research and development is being taken place right now at our R&D center here in Korea to ensure that this plastic can be properly applied to our vehicles.
And from my side, what I can say is that witnessing the efforts that Kia has put in overtaking all of these challenges was really inspiring and showcased the commitment that Kia has for this partnership. So thank you for giving a bit more of a glimpse on that. And I guess that the next question is, so when can we expect to see these the results of this our hard work? And when will this product be available for the public?
Right, so as we speak, both our teams, the Ocean Cleanup and Kia teams, are working hard to bring this vision to reality. We are looking at various ways to apply this plastic to our vehicles. And in the second half of this year, we are going to make an announcement and give more details on the first application of Ocean Cleanup plastic into Kia vehicles. So just bear with us for a little while longer, and we'll be communicating this later this year.
Interesting. I look forward to seeing that.
I'd also like to wish the best of luck to the extraction crew. We hope for another record recovery, as well as we look forward very much to receiving some of that plastic so that we can repurpose that into our future vehicle lineup. So that's about all I have for you today, Ricardo, but I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell a little bit of the Kia story.
It was great to have you, Michael. Let me take the chance to thank everybody in the Kia's team for their efforts and support of the Ocean Cleanup mission. We really appreciate that, and thank you again for taking the time today, and we look forward to send you some more plastic to input it into your value chain.
Great. Thanks, Ricardo. Nice seeing you.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed getting some insights into our partnership with Kia. Now we're back to the live feed to see what's happening there. The lift and the dump should be happening soon, so Boyan has rejoined us for this key moment. Now, Glenn, where are we at with the lift?
Yeah, so they're just preparing for that now. When we saw the picture of the deck just a second ago, we could see that there was two kind of lines coming down from the top of the picture, and those are the two cranes that we have at the forward end of the deck. Yeah, there's one on each side of the vessel, and that's what they're going to use to like grab hold of the middle of the retention zone and pick it up. And it's open at the other end, so all of that plastic's going to come out. This is the moment that's like super exciting when you're on board, and it's going to be great to see it here as well. Yeah, it's kind of the highlight of the day. So they've just had a small meeting and a discussion. How are they going to do it? How are they going to do it right and do it safely? Where does everybody need to be? How are they going to communicate with each other? So they made a plan now, and we can look forward to seeing all of this plastic on the deck.
All right, it sounds great. Boyan, what has it been like to watch this live stream so far?
Yeah, it's been really cool. It's as said, it's the first time that we have such great footage, as it happens. So, of course, I've seen these things many times, but that it's real time, I think, makes it quite special. Of course, it's also quite a long set, but of course there are always things happening offshore, right? That you can't really predict. So safety first as always. But yeah, can't wait to see the catch on deck.
Likewise. Now, each of our systems have a different nickname. Could you explain a little bit about the story behind the nickname and what those nicknames are?
Yeah. So indeed, it started with our first system. We named Wilson after the volleyball and in the movie Castaway. We had a few other alternatives. We were thinking maybe Megamate after the spaceship in Spaceballs. But actually then we had this little support vessel we actually decided to call Megamate. Then the Tom Hanks theme stuck, and we decided to name System 2 Jenny, of course, after the girlfriend and boat in Forrest Gump. And then we just decided to kind of double down on the Tom Hanks theme. So System 3 is of course Josh, after the main character in the movie Big, because System 3 is pretty big, right? So if anyone has any good suggestions for next Tom Hanks references, please let us know, because we're probably going to need quite a few of them in the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, going back to what's happening, with our socials, we're seeing, in terms of the guess the catch, we're seeing a few different guesses, such as 3,000 kilos, 5,000 kilos, 8,000. Very optimistic. You can guess yours too at the link in the comment. Now,
it's always so hard to say, right? Because the density is so variable. Sometimes you look at it and you think like, oh, that's definitely going to be a record, and then it's full of crates or something and buoys, and it will be.
What do you think? What do you think it is?
Go for maybe 5 to 8 tons. I guess.
It's not very specific.
Want me to be okay? 5,824 kilos.
There you go. Heard it here first.
Make sure you enter it in the form.
Committed.
What about you?
I'm going to guess 6,200. But no idea.
I was more specific than you were.
So let's take a moment just to appreciate what we're seeing, and we'll be back with you shortly. All right, we're back. We're getting a little bit closer to the key moment, but maybe while we're waiting, Boyan, does seeing this make you want to be out there?
Yes, for sure. It's I've definitely been dying to go out there. It's just quite hard to plan these a full trip, but yeah, like definitely looking for it. Like, I should go at some point in time. I think I should be there. Yeah, kind of looking for the right opportunity for that. But yeah, must
One
be.
day.
Yeah.
Now, Glenn, we saw that there was nobody on deck a few minutes ago. Now there are some people on deck. What are some of the safety measures that they're carrying out or that are in place?
Yeah, well, we were talking before about how isolated it is and therefore like how serious it would be if anything were to go wrong, and that's why, yeah, numerous points during this live stream we've seen everybody just pause and take a moment and speak to each other about how things are going to go, and it really is for these guys. It's like safety to make sure that they do it right and that they look after each other. And also, yeah, that's the most important thing, but also secondary to that they look after all of the equipment as well, and that we don't obviously damage the retention zone or anything else. So we're on a moving platform, lots of weight involved. These cranes are going to be used. We're also going to use some other lines as well to keep everything positioned safely, so you have wires that are under tension. So these are all kind of risks that the guys are aware of, and they would have been discussing all of those things when they were having that chat earlier. There are places to stand that are smart places to stand because they're safe if something goes wrong, and then there's definitely places you could put yourself that would be really unsafe if something went wrong, and everybody will just be looking out for each other and kind of keeping an eye. And if somebody, yeah, it can also actually, it could potentially be tempting to take a look at something which is as interesting and different as this, and maybe think that you can just kind of go and take a look, and if somebody goes into the wrong area, then everybody will react and make sure that that person is kind of reminded and they step back. So they're all looking out for each other all the time, and they need to do that, and that's what we've been seeing so far.
Of course, also if something were to happen, the impact of that, being 5 days away from land is of course much larger than if it were to happen,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything is amplified when you're in that environment. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy to get to the hospital.
No, absolutely not. No.
Can we hear a winch rolling, or what is that noise?
Yeah, they will be. Yeah, so like I said, the lines that you see, in the image on the top right, you can see two lines that are coming down from the top of the screen, and they're the ones that we're going to use to lift, and they're coming from the cranes. So in the 4 images that you see in the top left, you've got these 2 cranes that are sticking out that we're going to use for the lift, and there we see they're going to start to kind of get everything in position now. And then we're also going to have some other lines coming from further back on the deck that they're going to just make sure nothing's swinging out of control, and also that we're holding the opening open so that the plastic can come out.
Okay, so they're lifting it now. We're getting closer.
This is, again, this is like a really nice bit to be on board as well, because like I said, when you see it coming over the stern, you get this big noise. You're going to see everything fall. It's a steel deck. The whole deck is shaking underneath you as well.
This is it. This is the mission. This is the impact. This is all of the plastic. Wow. Boyan, what do you think? How was extraction number 100?
It's cool. I mean, it looks exactly like 5,824 kilos. So I'm happy. Yeah, it's pretty sizable catch. You see quite a lot of nets, so that's good for the kilos.
Yeah, I mean,
it's always magical to see that. Realizing that would have been in the ocean for possibly centuries if we wouldn't have taken it out today.
Yeah,
it's a good feeling, and I always just think, just imagine the outrage if the reverse would happen, if anyone would dump. I saw a video recently of some stupid college kids throwing a bin of waste off their boat in Florida, And I was thinking, well, that just got 20,000 retweets or something like that.
Wow.
And that's like maybe 1 kilo of plastic. So now, of course, this is kind of the reverse of that, but that on a much larger scale. So yeah, it is very, very special, and yeah, just exciting every time.
Yeah, indeed. There was in this shot here, you can see the people in the background, and they're, about the same height as the pile of plastic, so it's quite a decent pile. Well, Boyan, thank you for joining us. It was great that you could be here today. Thank you very much.
Me.
And now, maybe Glenn, could you tell us, was this a smooth operation in your eyes? What do you think?
Yeah, it's been looking really, really nice. Yeah, everything, you saw kind of how quickly it goes at the end there, and all of that is just about all that very careful preparation that they've put in at all of those steps. And then when it is time to do it, then yeah, the lift goes, smoothly and efficiently, and you get that nice kind of explosion of plastic over the deck. I find it super satisfying to watch.
It's actually surprised me a little bit. It came like a lot sooner than I expected.
Yeah.
So what is going to happen now?
So now we'll get into sorting. So we'll talk a little bit, I guess, just to close off the stream just after this, about the eventual destination of all this plastic. So we're going to recycle absolutely all of it that we can recycle. And the first step of that we're going to do offshore, actually. So they're going to 2 different primary recycling streams. We take all of our ropes and nets and we send them into one stream. And then a lot of what's left after that is kind of hard, rigid plastics, and they go into a different stream. So they're going to do that first step of that separation offshore in this instance. That's how we're doing it at the moment. We might change that in the future. So we're going to clear the retention zone away from the system, and then they're going to start that sorting.
All right. That will be also an exciting moment. Now, one of the questions that we get asked most often is, what do we do with the plastic? So we've brought in our catch management expert, Stella, to answer this question. Stella, welcome.
Thank you.
So we just learned about how, as part of our partnership with Kier, they're using some of our ocean plastic to make new products. But that is not the only thing that we are doing with the ocean plastic. Could you explain the broader picture of everything that happens to the ocean plastic we catch?
Of course. So let me start by saying how exciting it was to watch the whole extraction operation and to see that moment that the catch falls on the deck of the vessel. It still hits me with mixed emotions of how great it is that we got it out of the ocean, at the same time to see how big that problem is and that there's still a long way to go for us to solve it. Also, it's quite sad to realize that every time. Ultimately, the goal is that this plastic never re-enters the environment. And my team works on waste management and recycling of the catch. So indeed, our job starts only now. And like Myra was also explaining, on the deck, the first sorting happens because the catch is checked for bycatch. And the hard plastics and the fibers are sorted into 2 different fractions at that moment, because once we bring it back to shore, it will be recycled. Most of the plastic can be recycled at 2 different recycling facilities. And that is because the fibers require specialty recycling technology to be recycled. After the plastic gets recycled, indeed, our global mission partner Kia will repurpose the plastic in their electric vehicles. And at the moment, we're also scouting for more of these global mission partners. It's really important because on the one hand, it will bring us the funding that is required to get more plastic out of the ocean, but we obviously need to do something with that plastic to prevent it from re-entering the environment. So repurposing it into durable products is one way to do that.
Indeed. And now Glenn mentioned that we find a lot of fishing nets. So could you explain a little bit about what sort of plastic that we typically find in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? What is it made out of?
So our research team has found that about 80% of the plastic that is floating in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch comes from the fishing industry. And so that's what you see indeed in the composition of the catch. You also see it now in this big pile, a lot of fish nets. More than half of the weight of the catch is usually fish nets and ropes used for fishing. And the other part is all kinds of objects. The ones that are that can be attributed to the fishing industry are mostly crates, barrels. But there are many things that we find in the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, unfortunately, such as fridges, office furniture, toys. Basically all the floating types of plastics. And we just, in one of the videos, saw a plastic water bottle, PET bottle. And that is actually something that we don't find so often, because PET is a type of plastic that is heavier than seawater, so it will sink unless it has still a cap on it and there's air trapped inside. So yeah, contrary to what many people think, there are not so many of these PET bottles in the catch. It's more fish nets and all types of hard plastic items.
I see. And what are some of the most surprising things that we've found?
Yeah, like I said, it's already flabbergasting to see how some of these items end up 5 days of sailing out of the shore. And I brought some of them with me.
Oh, exciting.
So this is, I guess, a toy or a little, really small, flower watering thing. In it, we have some golf balls, 3 of them, which, you may wonder why they are even floating in the ocean.
Yeah, you would expect them to be quite heavy.
Yeah, indeed. But they're still floating out there. This little guy was also floating in the ocean. I think it was probably used to scare off birds in some garden. Quite scary if I would come across one in the ocean. But these are just some of the examples of the things that, obviously they don't belong in the ocean.
No, definitely not. Now, we talked about our scale-up plans with Boyan and Joel a little bit earlier. And when that happens, we're going to have a lot more plastic that we're going to have to deal with. So how are you preparing for that? What sort of facilities and partners are we looking for to help us deal with it?
So indeed, recycling capacity is something that is needed to make sure that we can deal with that big piles of plastic, and that we can ultimately repurpose that plastic into something durable that won't re-enter the environment. So at the moment, we work with recycling partners here in the Netherlands. We aim to move the recycling operations closer to where we catch the plastic, so North America. And that is, on the one hand, logistics efficiency. On the other hand, because we know that there will be much more plastic coming in, so having recyclers ready to receive that and be able to recycle it, that's also going to be very important.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Stella. That was very interesting. Now, let's continue to watch the crew hard at work with all of this stuff. So, Glenn, it looks like they're doing something with the retention zone at the moment.
Yeah, they're just moving that into a clear position because they obviously want to make some space so that they can do this sorting process that Stella was just describing. So the retention zone has done its job now, and like we said, this is the end of trip 20 now, so the next time that's going to be used is at the beginning of trip 21 in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, they'll just take it into an area where it's clear of the deck and leave themselves a nice big working space, and then they can do that sorting work.
Okay, I see. Now, let's take a few moments just to watch the crew, and we'll be back with you shortly. Now, it's wonderful to see this for the 100th time with all of you, and to celebrate this, we're going to watch a little compilation of our greatest hits from extraction number 1 to extraction 99. And we'll be back shortly.
So that was an amazing glimpse at our past 99 extractions. And right now we're seeing our 100th extraction being sorted on deck right this moment in the middle of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I think that's pretty amazing. You still have a chance, by the way, to take a guess on how much trash there's on board if you haven't entered the Guess the Catch game. So you can scan the QR code or enter the link and place your guess. We will announce the winners once we have weighed the catch, so probably in the next couple of days. I want to say thanks to everyone for actively taking part in this live stream, so asking your questions, leaving comments. There's been a lot of donations as well, which is helpful because we cannot do this alone. And so thank you so much. And this is something that I've seen on social for basically on a daily basis. We see people wanting to help and asking, how can I do this? So please let people know about our mission, spread awareness, and if you want to take it to the next step, you can visit our website and either make a donation, or we've also introduced a fundraising platform earlier this year. And I just wanted to highlight a few cool examples. We've had some really cool initiatives happening where people are doing something they enjoy to raise funds for cleaner oceans. One of these examples is a 6th grade where the kids pledged to walk 1 mile if they raised $200, and they went way past their goal, and so they did and shared some cool updates on their page. We also had an example of biking for Buoyant's Ocean Cleanup, where Colleen biked on the East Coast in the US. She did above 2,500 miles, I think, meeting people along the way, spreading the awareness of our mission and raising funds at the same time. Another great example is a company, IMC. They gathered all their team members, 30 team members, and the initiative is to exercise, cover some kilometers in running, bicycling, etc. And they're running this until the end of the year, where they will afterwards raise each kilometer with a donation to the ocean cleanup. So we really much appreciate all these ways that all of you are supporting us. It's been amazing. We definitely cannot achieve this huge, huge mission by ourselves. So thank you so much again. It's been super great fun for me to watch all your interactions online today and bringing you closer to this action. I hope you all enjoyed it. Let us know if you did. Maybe we'll do it again. And for now, follow us on our social media channels, of course, to see all the following extractions, because it's definitely not the last one.
We're coming to the end of this broadcast, and we would like to thank you all for tuning in and supporting us on our mission. We really appreciate all of your support, and we couldn't do it without you. We're the Ocean Cleanup. We rid the world's oceans of plastic, and this is extraction number 100. We hope you enjoyed this live plastic extraction and can walk away with a better understanding of our ocean operations. Keep following our progress on social media, and if you support what we do, speak about us to your colleagues, friends, and family. This brings us to the end of this live stream. Thank you, Glenn.
Thanks.
And to all of our viewers, thank you again for joining us, and goodbye.